Today's video is still on the plagues, but a different book. Here we're going to Psalm 78, written to recount the power and majesty of God, and to recount the history of God's faithfulness to the Israelites. This Psalm, Psalm 78. I can get the page to turn. That's very thin. It's a maskil of Asaph. Asaph, of course, instruction psalm. Maskil means instruction. As we see there, it's usually a musical term, and also that's an instruction. But really, in this passage that we're looking at, it's a recount of the plagues of Egypt. I'll read from verse 40. How often they rebelled against him in the desert and grieved him in the wasteland. Again and again they put God to the test. They vexed the Holy One of Israel. They did not remember his power. And this is the point in the passage. The day he redeemed them from the oppressor, the day he displayed his miraculous signs in Egypt, his wonders in the region of Zoan. He turned their rivers to blood. They could not drink from their streams. He sent swarms of flies that devoured them, and frogs that devastated them. He gave their crops to the grasshopper, their produce to the locust. He destroyed their vines with hail and their sycamore figs with sleet. He gave over their cattle to the hail, their livestock to bolts of lightning. He unleashed against them his hot anger, his wrath, his indignation, and hostility, a band of destroying angels. He prepared a path for his anger. He did not spare them from death. He gave them over to the plague. He struck down all the firstborn of Egypt. And that's just a few more verses just to finish off. The first fruits of manhood in the tents of Ham. He brought his people out like a flock. He led them like a sheep through the desert. He guided them safely, so they were unafraid, but the sea engulfed their enemies. Then it goes on to speak about the further history of the Israelites. There's those initial verses that we want to focus on to look at this message, and that was verses 40 to 42, and here we see that judgment is the response to rebellion. These verses frame the plagues as God's response to Egypt's defiance and Israel's forgetfulness. Verse 42, they did not remember his power, and again they put God to the test. Exodus records Pharaoh's hardness, but the psalm adds that verse 42, Israel do not remember his power. Amos 4 verse 10, God sent plagues as a warning to the people. We read that in the prophecy of Amos. Romans 2 verse 4 speaks about the hardness of a heart that stores up for itself the wrath of God. And here we see that persistent rebellion invites consequences, and so we need to choose repentance early. Then in verse 43, we see the plagues are described as miraculous signs. The day he displayed his miraculous signs in Egypt, his wonders in the region of Zoan. Unlike Exodus, which focuses on the events, the psalm calls them signs, pointing to God's glory and sovereignty in them. Deuteronomy 6 verse 22 says, before our eyes the Lord sent wonders and signs. Signs lead to faith in God's saving work. You remember John's Gospel, he says, many other signs which are not written in this book, for these are written that you might believe Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that believing you might have life through his name. John chapter 20 and 30 and 31. God's works in our lives are not random. They are meant to draw us closer to him, and this was one of the reasons why the signs were given in Egypt. Then in verses 44 to 51, and mainly in this section that we're focusing on here now, from verse 44, we get the recap of the plagues. We have plagues affecting the water, the land, the sky, and life, blood in rivers, hail from heaven, and locusts on earth. This is poetic. This is a poetical summary emphasizing every realm of creation is under God's command. Psalm 24 verse 1 says, "The earth is the Lord's and everything in it." Jeremiah 32:17, "Nothing is too hard for you." When life feels out of control, remember God rules over all. And then finally verses 52 and 53, which were the verses that were on the next page, we see God's purpose, redemption and covenant faithfulness in 52 and 53. After judgment, God brought his people out like a sheep through the desert, and he led them safely. This psalm connects the plagues with God's saving plan. Exodus, remember chapter 6 verse 6 says, "I will redeem you with mighty acts of judgment." Hebrews 11 verse 28 says, "By faith Israel obeyed and was spared." And so even in hardship, God was working for deliverance of the Israelites. And so the 4 points were: judgment leads to rebellion, the plagues were signs and wonders, God's sovereignty over creation and redemption, and covenant faithfulness, because God brought them, he led them like sheep through the desert. Thank you for listening.